It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. We are here for another episode of Locked On NFL Sunday. You've got myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jacksonola on Twitter, host of Locked On Saints podcast. And as always, joined by my good friend, Cody Roark of the Locked On Broncos podcast, at Cody Roark NFL. Cody, how are you this morning, man? Good morning to you.
You know what? I feel back to full strength, Ross, and I feel
man.
good. You know, mentally though today, in terms of covering the Broncos, I'm not so happy today. I kind of feel like I got to go on a rant today.
Oh, we're going to get to it, man. We're going to get to it because I need to know how you feel about this whole situation. But above all else, we're glad that you're well. We're glad that you're here, man. It's good to be back with you.
It's great to be back. And ladies and gentlemen, your team every day, we get to bring in the local experts surrounding their teams to talk on this beautiful NFL Sunday, Locked On NFL Sunday, every Sunday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Ross Jackson, myself, we got you covered. And look, Ross, we are here 5 weeks into the season. It's been kind of a roller coaster, but we finally made it. And, we're still going a quarter of the way through, and here we are. Yeah. Big games on tap today and a lot of storylines around the National Football League.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the biggest we'll get to here in just a moment. But real quick, I want to go through our list of folks that are going to be joining us today from the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast. We're glad to welcome in Chris Russell at RussellMania621 on Twitter. We're also going to be joined by Daniel Wade of the Locked On Chargers podcast. And of course, Brian Peacock of the Peacock and Williamson podcast, one of our national shows here on the network, as well as every single Monday through Friday, Locked On 49ers at BD Peacock on Twitter. So he'll be joining us. Those guys will be joining us, and we're going to be talking about each of their individual teams going into this Sunday. Dan, of course, covering the Chargers who play tomorrow night. Now, there was another team that was supposed to play tomorrow, a game that got moved to the Monday 2 p.m. slot, the slot that everybody loves. Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern or Pacific slot. But now it seems that that's been compromised. So give us the update. Give us the rant. Let us know what's going on over there in Broncos country.
So the NFL announced today that they're going to be rescheduling the Denver Broncos at the New England Patriots Week 5 matchup. It was originally scheduled for tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN. That has now been moved back to next Sunday. And this is just I think for the NFL, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, some of these teams that have tested positive for COVID-19 that have had positive cases, they've reshuffled a little bit. We've seen teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of experience the unfortunate nature of the rescheduling conflict. But now for the Denver Broncos, they were originally scheduled to play New England tomorrow. Then they were going to have a Week 6 matchup against the Miami Dolphins, a Week 7 against the Chiefs, and then their bye week in Week 8. Now the NFL is saying that this last week has been their bye week. But here's the deal. The Broncos, they've been practicing all week in preparation for New England. They practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They found out the game got rescheduled, so they didn't practice on Friday. They practiced yesterday on Saturday at the UCL Training Center in Inglewood, Colorado. And now they got to practice all week long. So essentially, Denver loses out on having an actual bye week. This is where a lot of players are frustrated. Justin Simmons, Melvin Gordon, a lot of players visibly frustrated with the NFL's decision to do this, when in the reality is I really believe they could have just shifted this game to a Week 18, Week 19 window, which I think is going to have to happen. It's inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
And then proceed as scheduled. But now everybody's schedules are going to change due to the fact that one team had positive cases. I don't agree with the NFL's decision. I think that they've handled this really poorly from that standpoint. I know they've done a lot of good things when it comes to COVID protocols and everything like that, but I think when you impact a team that's been following protocol, that hasn't had any positive cases, and that you completely fluctuate their schedule, this is a team that's already been battered by injuries, Ross. And it's unfortunate they don't get a bye week now. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those, I want to say, this is something that the NFL, sort of prepared for and knew was going to happen, but probably for the first time in the midst of shuffling around the schedule, I feel like this is really the first example of the NFL not having a plan in place for what this needs to be. This really should be one of those times where you say, okay, we're going to have to add this Week 18, Week 19 window, as you suggested, and something that the NFL has said that they're willing to do. I mean, it was part of the protocols and the protocols at the very beginning of all of this when the CBA was being renegotiated, and then they were talking about the return to play plan between the NFL and the NFLPA. There was always the conversation that, look, we can move the Super Bowl back, we can move the playoffs back if we need to make room for these games. just go ahead and do it at this point. I understood at an earlier point in the season why they didn't immediately do it. I understood why they were looking at Monday, Tuesday, or looking at swapping around bye weeks, because it made sense that would be the first order of the process. But at this point, when you get to this point to where you're affecting another team by taking away their bye week entirely, essentially, like, let's not pretend here. That's exactly what's happening to Denver if they have to play next week. When you're talking about doing that, now is the time to open up that window that you said that you had, that you know that you saved, and that is an option for you. Just go ahead and get that done.
Here's a bigger question I have, too. Let's say that the Broncos, Patriots are practicing all week at their team facilities, and all of a sudden you get to the point, let's say it's Friday, and then another Patriots player tests positive. What are they going to do with that game?
Right.
Are they going to push it back another week, or are they just going to say, look, we can't just keep doing this? And this is where teams, look, Denver played Tampa Bay in week 3. They had 4 days to play the Jets. They've been anticipating playing this weekend, and obviously it got pushed to Monday, and the players are not happy. Broncos fans are not happy. Broncos players are not happy. They feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. It's just unfortunate. But I think that, it poses a bigger question. I think the NFL needs to look at maybe, if in fact that we do see some more outbreaks happening amongst NFL teams, pushing pause for 2 weeks or giving teams additional bye weeks. You can build in bye weeks. If you could push the playoffs back, and if you can add week 18, week 19 windows, you can add in an additional bye week for every team, which I think would be beneficial. Maybe there's a week where every team in the NFL doesn't play. They have a bye week. Every team has a bye week. And then it allows things to kind of progress a little bit as well. And you get guys back healthy. But also, too, at the same time, listeners of Locked On NFL Sunday, just a reminder, you're watching here, you can interact with us. Leave your replies, reply on the stream, and we'll get to your comments as well as we get through this. So we want to hear your thoughts here on Locked On NFL Sunday. But Ross, the show must go on. We could play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. Hopefully the NFL does develop a strategy here in the next week or so that maybe outlines a little bit more for clarity going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all that I think it needs to be. I mean, I think we just need a greater outline in terms of what this is going to be. I've been on the defense of the NFL for the last few weeks in terms of saying, look, they do have a plan. They're following the plan exactly as they said that they would. Monday, Tuesday, then they're looking at bye weeks. Then they're potentially like last resort opening up. You're at last resort time. This is it. You're at last resort time. Tylen agrees. He said should just move the game to week 18. That's exactly right. I think we're all sort of on the same page about there. I need to get to one funny interaction that we just got. My good friend Dylan Sanders said he slept through yesterday. Did LSU end up playing? I guess that would be doubtful, is the way that I would say it.
I was really torn yesterday because there was a kid I coached in high school football and also when he was in middle school. He plays for LSU. He's number 87. His name is Cole Taylor. He's a 6'7" freak of nature athlete, tight end. But then I'm also a Mizzou grad. So it was really, I was like, the outcome either way I think was great, but you're seeing LSU struggle a little bit, and really it's with the defense, which is really crazy to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a quick shout out to my good friend Nader here too, that just came through. Want to make sure that I give him a quick shout out as well. But if you want to get a shout out, just go ahead and drop anything that you let us know how you're feeling, what's going on with today. How are you feeling about this, about the way that they're restructuring this Denver Broncos game? What are your suggestions? Let us know. And if you have any questions for our guests as well, please feel free. As always, we're going to be welcoming in 3 of our local experts talking about the biggest stories around their team. And in just a moment, we're going to welcome in here Chris Russell of the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast and talk about that WFT a little bit. But before we get to that, Cody, I do want to ask you real quick, one of the other sort of big things that's been going on around the NFL, aside from all the rescheduling and all of the shuffling, as well as that we're seeing more of these positive tests come up as well, just for, I just want to make sure we acknowledge another team that's going through it as well, Tennessee. They're under investigation right now because of the potential or because of a group, a meetup, a workout that they had on the 30th after reportedly being told on the 29th that they are not to gather inside or outside of the facility. So it's not just something that's, uncontrollable in any way. There's also some instances in which better decisions have to be made by clubs, players, and things like that. I think at this point, this sort of brings me back to the Marlins of the MLB. This sort of feels like at this point, everybody really should understand the risk of even going outside the protocol for a day and what kind of a risk that could have.
Yeah, this has been talked about extensively by every NFL team, and I know for the Broncos specifically, I mean, that's where I have the most knowledge right now, is that they've told their players the importance of making sure that when you leave this facility, you are doing your part, regardless of what you believe, because then it impacts the likelihood of them being able to make money for
Right.
players to get paid. And that's the important thing. But what we saw with the Tennessee Titans is absolute negligence in terms of you received the memo. And there are some people out there saying, well, the Tennessee Titans had no idea. They did have that communication sent out. They did have that. And just to see them kind of double down and backpedal a little bit from it, I think that the Titans case is very negligent in a sense where if you continue to see more positive by players, the NFL needs to look at having Tennessee forfeit some games because it is impacting the schedule. And it's not fair to the other teams that did follow protocol. And when you get together at a local field and you're doing these things, I get that the players want to stay in football shape. They want to be able to get things going. That way, when they do return to play, they can be firing on all cylinders. But at the cost of maybe exposing people to the risk furthermore, I think that's a big issue. And we've seen it so far. So, yeah, unfortunate.
Very, very. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our first guest for the day. Very excited to welcome in our good friend from the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast. It is the one and only Chris Russell. You can follow him on Twitter at RussellMania621. Chris, I think that's really one of the best Twitter handles on the network. How are you, buddy? Where are you? And let us know how everything's going for you. I want to. Yeah, I might want to check your mute there. See if I can help him on my end.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, there you are, buddy.
This is what happens when you try and wear earbuds to try and eliminate the noise that's all around us. Sorry about that. So I'm going to have to do it without the earbuds. So I'm going to have a little trouble hearing you guys. First of all, good morning. Thanks, Ross, for the nice words on the Twitter handle. Yeah, that's, when you love the WWE and you have a fake radio name that was given to you 20 years ago by some donk that you didn't like to begin with, you kind of live with it and you kind of make the best of it, and you kind of rock and roll with it. So everybody seems to like it. But yeah, boys, I don't know if you could see. Here behind me, we're at FedEx Field, and get ready for a little Los Angeles Rams, Washington Football Team football.
Love it, love it, love it. Very grateful that you were able to take the time to be with us today, and especially coming through while you're at the stadium. How many folks are expected to be at the stadium today?
Well, for the first game, the Washington team has had 2 home games. They have not allowed any fans of any sort, obviously. So today is the first day that they're allowing basically family of players. So I don't know how ultimately that's going to translate into amount of people. I can't imagine it's more than 400 or 500, somewhere in that range.
Right.
It's supposed to rain a lot here, guys. Especially, it was supposed to be raining already, and it's not. It's just overcast. So I don't know if that's going to change some things. But this is the first time that even close family and I guess close friends or whatever that can actually of the players and staff attend the game. Because the first 2 games, there have been nobody allowed except media and obviously whatever support personnel they needed.
Right.
Seems like crazy times right now, Chris. And one of the things I want to talk to you about this game, the biggest storyline, I think, for the Washington football team this week, we just all found out, Dwayne Haskins being benched, Kyle Allen now taking over as the starting quarterback. Obviously you've been there for the last, all season long. You've been able to see what's kind of gone through, especially with the culture change Ron Rivera's trying to implement. What was the really big factor behind the decision to bench Dwayne Haskins and now roll forward with Kyle Allen, who right now there's not a lot of stock really in terms of sample size?
Yeah, Cody, it's an incredibly layered, answer. So you guys are going to have to just give me a little bit of time to kind of, cross the T's and dot the I's here. Listen, from what I know, Ron Rivera was very, 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 very unsure of Dwayne Haskins when he took this job. People have to remember that Kyle Smith, who he immediately promoted to his vice president of player personnel, who's the son of longtime Charger GM A.J. Smith, and who's been in this organization since 2010 with Mike Shanahan and Jay Gruden. He was philosophically aligned with Jay Gruden and that coaching staff in terms of not wanting to draft Dwayne Haskins. The owner, Dan Snyder, made that pick against his football people's wishes. Nobody really wanted Dwayne Haskins, certainly at number 15 last year. And most of those people are gone, but Kyle wasn't. So Ron comes in, and we don't know exactly how they evaluated him in Carolina. but my sense is it wasn't great. So Ron comes in with Scott Turner, son of North Turner, as the offensive coordinator, Ken Zampese, and they're very unsure at the very minimum. They lay down the gauntlet. They lay down the challenge to Dwayne Haskins. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. You need to lose some weight. You need to work hard. You need to show us that you're mature, a leader, this, that, the other thing. And Dwayne does it and hits it out of the park and is really good for the first 6-7 months of the offseason, right? We all know that he was hurt by this, mess of COVID.
Right.
So when they show up late July, that was going to be the true test. When they could work with him 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day in the building, on the practice field, in the film room, that was going to be the true test. And if you believe what I believe and people that I've talked to and people that others have talked to, Dwayne was working, but maybe not working hard enough. Mm-hmm. And when you're a quarterback that's struggling and you're already, have a personnel and a coaching staff that's unsure of you, you're not going to get a very long leash if you're not doing everything that they want you to do on and off the field. Right. And that's where we're at today. Kyle Allen, they knew. He started a bunch of games, obviously, in Carolina last year, so here we are.
Wow. What a saga. Just an absolute saga going on around that quarterback position.
It's just another typical week in Washington.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Let me ask you another question about the quarterback room, though, because there's another quarterback there, of course, Alex Smith, who has made a tremendous and phenomenal recovery, getting back to being cleared for football action. I've heard some talk that there might be some interest in getting Alex Smith back out on the football field at some point. Is there any truth to that, Chris? Are they wanting to get Alex Smith back out there eventually in place of even Kyle Allen, who, of course, has some rapport with Ron Rivera?
That's always, sorry, Russ. I think that's always been on the table once Alex was ready. Mm-hmm. The problem is even though Alex was activated off the PUP list on August 9th in training camp, and even though he was put on the 53 and not the short-term IR, it was always with a goal in mind. Hey, we need to see him in practice because we're not going to be able to hit him in practice. They don't hit.
Right.
NFL teams don't hit quarterbacks in practice. We need to see him develop consistently an ability to protect himself by being able to sprint and roll and run away from guys like Aaron Donald and, others that, an NFL pass rush is going to present. And clearly they have seen enough now at this point that he is one single snap, one single mistake by Kyle Allen or injury away from playing today, never mind next week, 3 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, whatever it might be. So he's ready to go. By all accounts, all the medical people have signed off, his doctors, the team training staff, the team doctors. They have taken their time working on this diligently. So, again, we could see Alex Smith as early as today if Kyle Allen gets injured for the first time since November 18th, 2018. Obviously an incredible story, guys. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good he'll be. I mean, he looked to be the most accurate quarterback in training camp when we last saw him.
Right.
Now, that's a long time ago. We don't get to watch full practices anymore, so who knows? But Alex has always been pretty accurate, and he's been pretty mobile, and he has good arm strength. The only question is whether he was going to be able to make this comeback, and right now he's on the precipice of it. Yeah, I absolutely think you will see Alex Smith. I'll put it sooner than later. I don't know if it'll be today.
Incredible.
The whole story about Alex Smith, his comeback journey, I think if anybody watched that East 60 documentary, I know for me, just from a humanity standpoint, part of me was like, just for his health, I was like, I hope he can come back, but I was also very like, I don't want him to get hurt again. But that's just really just Alex Smith's perseverance, his resiliency, and the fact that his family is just so supportive of him. I think he has the opportunity here to really kind of make a big story. Not. I don't think he's looking for a story, but for him to come back from everything, something that probably 9 out of 10 people will never come back from if they had the same thing happen to them, I think speaks volumes to Alex Smith, his testament of his journey. And obviously, too, with this Washington football team, I do think they have some weapons that Alex Smith could really gel with in comparison to a guy like Kyle Allen. So if we do get to see some Alex Smith, I tell you what, I'm taking off my analyst hat, and I'm putting on my Alex Smith hat, and I'm just rooting for the guy.
Yeah, Cody. I mean, I think everything you said there is right. And again, I've always thought once we got to a point where he was cleared off a PUP this year that he would play at some point this year. when the injury first happened, I don't think anybody thought he would ever play again.
Right.
And obviously, with everything that was profiled in that E60 and everything we were hearing, and quite honestly, we were hearing rumors. I was hearing rumors of even worse stuff than actually what was the case.
Right.
So the bottom line is it's a miracle that we're even at this point. That again, he is one snap away, guys, from playing today. One thing I will say though about Kyle Allen. Remember last year, guys, when he replaced Cam Newton, he started off 4-0 for Carolina, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, 66% completion rate, 100, I forget the exact number, I think a 104 quarterback rating. He was really good those first 4 games. Now, it was after that, as injuries piled up, his offensive line was torn to shreds, where he started getting sacked 4 or 5 times a game. This Washington team sacked him 7 times in Carolina, the game that ultimately was Ron Rivera's last with the Panthers, and ironically enough, he's now the Washington head coach.
That was his interview.
Yeah. So, here's the bottom line. I don't know if, I know the popular narrative, Lock and Four wrote about it, that Alex Smith is going to be the starter in a week or two. Well, I don't know that because it depends on how Kyle Allen plays. Kyle Allen plays like he did the first 4 or 5 games that he did in Charlotte last year, he's going to remain the starter. And they can wait on Alex Smith, especially if they're winning. If not, then we might see Alex Smith next week or 2 weeks from now or whatever the situation might be. I mean, it is probably a very fluid situation. I would not rule out. I don't think the Washington team wins today, guys, but I would not rule out that Kyle Allen plays pretty well, like 250 to 275. He uses some of that athletic ability to run away from Aaron Donald, which Dwayne Haskins has cement for, in his feet. He wasn't getting away from those guys. He took a couple of horrible sacks last week. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, one more question before we get you out of here. I just want to ask, there's been some talk about Chase Young returning to the lineup here, going up against an offensive line like the Los Angeles Rams, who have given up quite a bit, particularly over on the edge. Right now, the Washington football team has a pass rush win rate by ESPN of 35%, which is 27th in the NFL. How much of a boost is getting the young rookie back?
Oh, I mean, it's a huge boost because he hasn't played in 6+ quarters, and their defense has been shredded in terms of points allowed in that time. Now, not yards allowed, because a lot of the drives, they've given up, guys, 5 touchdown drives since Chase Young went out. 5 touchdown drives of 3 plays or less, and all off of either offensive turnovers or a turnover off of a 54-yard missed field goal last week, which turned into that Lamar Jackson 50-yard run. I don't know if, Chase Young is obviously not good enough, I don't think, to stop all 5 of those touchdowns and those momentum changers. Sure. But I damn sure bet he would be able to make a difference and maybe stop one of them. Remember, they're also without Matt Ioannidis, so who's arguably been their best interior pass rusher over the last couple of years, and was off to a very good start. So there is no doubt that getting Chase Young back today, assuming that nothing has happened behind me here in the pregame warm-up, he was expected to play. It is a huge boost. And, look, this Jared Goff, we all know, right? LA doesn't have explosive weapons, and Jared Goff is not Lamar Jackson, and he's not, Kyler Murray. So I think that sets up well, even though they've got a couple of good tackles in Havenstein and
is it Whitworth that's still out there?
And who?
Is it Whitworth?
Yeah. Andrew Whitworth. Yeah, exactly. I was drawing a blank. The old 37-year-old monster that's still out there. Yeah. So Whitworth and Havenstein, I think it sets up pretty well for a return for Chase Young, and actually a pretty good, decent matchup, I think, for this Washington defensive line.
Love it.
Boom. Obviously, hey, Chris, love it. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game today. We're going to be watching that game very closely. And tell Nikki Javala I said hi. We miss her in Denver.
Will do. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Take care, bud.
I tell you what, Ross, there is not a better guy in the industry than Chris Russell. Russell does a phenomenal job. And we're very fortunate to have him part of here, the Locked On NFL Network. He covers the Locked On Washington football team on your favorite podcast provider. You can get that every single day. Chris Russell bringing the heat for the Washington football team faithful. So Yeah, it's a tough matchup. The Los Angeles Rams, they've been rolling a little bit, though. I was a little surprised last week against the Giants, really how close that game was.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't get to see that same explosiveness offensively that we saw earlier. But that defense for the Rams, I tell you, they were flying around to a point. There was some bad blood.
Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey, Golden Tate, that was entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a ton of fun watching that one. And just, when you get all the attitude that comes with it. But I got to tell you, Chris Russell's evaluation of Jared Goff not being Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, I think, is maybe the nicest way I've ever heard the inathleticism of Jared Goff ever evaluated. I love it. We appreciate Chris for coming through. Once again, you can follow him on Twitter at RussellMania621, and you can catch him, as Cody said, every Monday through Friday over on the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast. Let's go ahead and get started with our next guest here, somebody that I've talked to, or at least a team that I've been talking with a bunch this week. Let's welcome in Daniel Wade of the Locked On Chargers podcast. You can catch him every Monday through Friday over there, and you can catch him on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports. Dan, how are you, buddy?
Hey guys, how's it going? What's up? I'm having a little issues hearing you. I heard you up until that very last second, until you put me on.
No,
you're
worries,
good. Your audio's coming in clear. Obviously, Daniel, you and I get to talk quite a bit being in the AFC West together. Obviously, good to hear you. I mean, we're not going to see each other for a little bit of time, so this is the only time we get to see each other, I think, till probably towards the end of the season. So it'll be intriguing.
Absolutely. Are you still having some trouble hearing us at the moment? Yeah, he's working on it. He's working on it.
So, Ross, let's kind of deflect, because Daniel's team is a team like you happen to cover. They're going against the New Orleans Saints here. Monday Night Football. Obviously, we look at the Chargers. Justin Herbert has been putting on a clinic. Drew Brees, the offense started to get things rolling again. Michael Thomas he got upgraded to questionable, which is great. It's progress. Do you think he's going to make his debut in this game?
I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of hope he doesn't.
Of course, this is the first time I come on.
No worries. Take your time. Take your time. I kind of hope that he doesn't. You know what I mean? I kind of hope that for this game, they kind of let him rest, and that they, because they have a bye week next week as well. And so with all of that, yeah, right. I know. I'm so sorry. I hear you. But, I get a little concerned about it because, I want him to come back, obviously, for this team and to get folded into what has become a bit of an offensive, like they're getting their offensive groove back at this point and everything. But I don't want him to end up risking any further health issues or anything like that. So, and Dan, we have eyes on you. Just give me a thumbs up if you, once you think that you're good, we'll bring you back in here. But that's kind of my thing when it comes to Michael Thomas, if that makes sense.
I was listening to Call to the Booth. That's Aqib Talib's podcast. He had Saints wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders on, and one of the things that they had discussed was the narrative that is ongoing right now, that people from week to week, they seem to change their tune. Drew Brees, his arm is shot, and then Emmanuel Sanders was like, did you see that back shoulder throw he threw to me against Detroit? He said his arm is just fine. And really, when you take a look at a guy like Drew Brees, Emmanuel Sanders said it best. He's not the guy that when you look at guys like Patrick Mahomes that could put it in the bucket. Drew Brees is more of a laser. It's going to get to you quick, and it's not going to have that high arcing trajectory. I mean, I think that's very accurate in terms of where Drew Brees is at, and certainly if they could get Michael Thomas back. But let's talk about Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's just got this ridiculous quick change of pace, and that touchdown he had against Green Bay, I tell you what, it was a difference maker. But, overall, what would you say the storyline has been for the Saints so far up to this point of the season? We know they had some early on struggles. Week one, just some continuity stuff, consistency, but now it seems like they're starting to get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're seeing now is chemistry developing between Drew Brees and his other options, so the receiver options. Traquan Smith has played 4 games so far this season, and in the 3 games without Michael Thomas, he has already put up 75% or more of his catches and receiving yardage production of last season. 234 last season. He's already up to 186 receiving yards this year. He had 18 catches in all of last season. Already 14 this season. So you're seeing that. You're seeing the chemistry with Emmanuel Sanders start to build up. Those two really relying on each other, going after each other, are going to each other. Drew Brees going to him even in contested catch situations, catch and traffic situations. The timing routes are there. You're starting to see Drew Brees release before the route break happens at the top of routes. All of that stuff that we didn't see the first probably 2 weeks of the season we're starting to see now. And Alvin Kamara just being the glue that holds it all together, along with an outstanding offensive line. Alvin Kamara so far, to me, is the offensive player of the year through the first quarter of the season. I don't think that's unfair to say. No. The guy has been outstanding. He leads the league right now in all-purpose, or rather, let me say yards from scrimmage, as well as all-purpose yards and receiving and combined receiving and rushing touchdowns, with 7. First player in in New Orleans franchise history to have 7 touchdowns through their first 4 games of the season. He's been absolutely outstanding. And if you look at the difference between he and the next running back in terms of receiving yards in the NFL, he's got 361. The guy right behind him, 231. The guy right behind him is just about half of that. And James Robinson of the Jaguars. So he's 1 yard short of doubling the second place running back when it comes to receiving yardage. He's been outstanding so far this year.
He has. And as we wait to get Daniel Wade on, hopefully he's dealing with some technical difficulties. If not, we can find a way to segue the conversation. But this is a tough matchup, essentially. Now, coming into this game, the New Orleans Saints, for the Chargers side of things, questionable right now is Mike Williams and Joey Bosa. These are 2 impact players for this Los Angeles football team. But I think the storyline, when you look at LA so far, it's been Justin Herbert. His rise so far, he came into that Kansas City Chiefs game literally moments before pregame. He's like, all right, hey, look, Tyrod's out, you're in. And he came in and he almost beat the Chiefs. I mean, he was very impressive. He's making some of those small mistakes along the way in some of these games, but what we saw from him against Tampa Bay last week, I tell you what, I've been an Oregon guy. I've seen Justin Herbert from when he was in high school all the way through Oregon. He's making some big boy throws.
Oh, yeah.
League. What type of matchup problem does this pose for the Saints in the secondary?
Well, when you look at the Saints secondary performance so far this season, it poses every matchup problem. They have struggled mightily against, making sure that big plays don't happen. And obviously they were down both of their starting corners last week. But in the weeks before that, you look at the tight end production over the past 4 games, over the first 4 games of the season, and the Saints have struggled big time against tight ends, and they've shown to struggle a little bit against running backs out of the backfield. This is a familiar issue for the Saints, something that they've tried to really pinpoint and work on. They got better at last year in 2019, but have started to slack a bit here in 2020. You're starting to see the production there. Justin Herbert is in a fantastic position here as a rookie quarterback, getting sort of his unexpected start, as you mentioned, but now being named the starter moving forward. And every rookie quarterback's best friend is what? A very good tight end. They've got Hunter Henry there. They have a fantastic matchup here against the Saints secondary and against the Saints defense. And so I think this might be a little bit of a shootout when it comes down. I don't think you're going to see the, 20-17 type style game that you saw, or 20-23 type style game that you saw against the Chiefs. Yeah. I think it's going to be more like what we saw last week between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Los Angeles Chargers, and sort of that type of continuation of the process for Justin Herbert. The Saints have struggled mightily sometimes when they are matching up against rookie quarterbacks. This will probably be no real difference here. I think the big thing that's going to be hurtful for the Chargers is that on their right side of their offensive line, both tackle Brian Bulaga as well as guard Trey Turner, who they traded for over the offseason, are out for this game. So that's a big time blow for them. That's the side that Cam Jordan also rushes from, who we saw start to come back to life last week after his abductor surgery over the offseason. He's still getting back into game shape and starting to figure out what it feels like to play with that. I think that is going to be the big thing. Can you not only get pressure on Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert's also very good under pressure as well. He's not rocked very easily. He does a good job, but you have to be able to get to him, close out plays as well.
And he's been able to get the ball out of his hands quickly. I think that's just the thing, because when you take a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how often they blitz, Justin Herbert was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Now, I do think there's going to be a critical X factor in this game. No Austin Eckler. He's going to be out for a long period of time here, dealing with a hamstring and a knee injury. So Josh Kelly's going to see some more run here. I think that's going to be a big blow, though. But if one of those tailbacks can step up in light of Eckler being out, I think that this could be a very fun and very competitive game on Monday Night Football, which we were expecting as a doubleheader, because the Broncos and the Patriots are supposed to play. But now we're going to see that.
What happened to that game, by the way? I don't remember what happened.
And if you're just now joining, folks, obviously that game got postponed another Sunday, so we're going to have to wait to talk Broncos, Patriots. And we had Mike debate on last week's Locked On NFL Sunday to be able to talk about some of the things coming up. And it's just one of those things that we saw here where the NFL is just having to change, and there's some storylines that are building with that. But Real quick too, I'm not sure if Daniel's able to go. Is he giving you the thumbs up yet?
I'm waiting to see. I got a nod from him. Let's try to bring him on. We'll talk with Daniel real quick before we move on to Brian. Hey, Daniel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys now.
There we go.
As soon as I came in, all you guys cut out. That was fun.
Hey, it happens, man. It's I'll call it. I want to call it live TV, but I guess it's more like live internet. I guess.
No worries.
But hey, that's how it goes, man.
Happy to be here with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Happy to be here with you as well. Thanks very much for taking the time to come through with us. Once again, this is Daniel Wade of the Locked on Chargers podcast, Monday through Friday. Everything you need on the Chargers. Daniel and the guys have you covered over there, and you can follow him on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, as well as Locked on Chargers. You can find at Locked on Chargers or Locked on LAC, right? Is that
that's the one. Locked on LAC. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, Daniel, we were just talking a little bit about Justin Herbert, the way that he got thrust into action and how he's performed so far. What has been most impressive to you watching Justin Herbert come out here and play the way that he has so far this season?
Well, I think the weirdest part is just how unprecedented it's been. I mean, like there's many a times where you have a rookie who the starter gets injured and then they get thrust into action, before they're potentially ready, even when that wasn't the plan. And with Tyrod Taylor, when it's your own team doctor, that's what makes it unprecedented.
Right.
That's what makes it a situation that I've never seen before. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for me is I wasn't a fan of it. The pick that is Justin Herbert, 6th overall. I was a big Tua guy. I mean, I'm to be the first one to admit it, but just to see the process of how much he's gotten better at things that he struggled with in college, I think has to be the most surprising thing to me. I think it's the throwing under pressure. I mean, you can look in every single game so far, you'll find one throw. In the first game against the Chiefs, it's 3rd and 10, 25-yard pass to Keenan Allen in between Tyrann Mathieu and another defender as he's getting crushed. I mean, it seems like every week he has something like that. Last week, it's an all-out blitz, 0 coverage against the Saints, 3rd and 7. He ends up, dropping back a little Patrick Mahomesian, honestly, just keeps falling back off the back foot, drops it over the top for a 72-yard touchdown to answer Tom Brady after they had just scored 21 points unanswered. I mean, and stuff like that I just never saw that from him in college. I really didn't even see the wow throws very much from him in college. There wasn't a ton that just said, wow. Like Jordan Love had more wow throws on his tape than Justin Herbert did in college. So I think those things, the footwork, all of those things that he was not great at in college, coming in, no training camp, any of those things, and just excelling in a lot of those things in some scenarios.
I'm a big believer too, because I've watched Justin Herbert since he was a high school quarterback and at college, and what I'm seeing from him with the Chargers, I honestly believe that he's in a system right now that really plays to his strengths as a quarterback, something that we really didn't get to see too much of at Oregon. Now, Justin Herbert, I think throwing on the run, he is very, very special in that. We haven't seen that happen so far yet with the Chargers, but there was a play last week, Dan, that I saw where they faked the inside handoff to the running back. He goes down like he's going to option, and then he throws that RPO to the outside to the receiver who's really next to the sideline. They have the capability with all the weapons that they do have, barring some of the injuries. Obviously, Mike Williams questionable for this matchup, but Keenan Allen and KJ Hill, you get these guys in, Joshua Kelly. They have an opportunity still to be very competitive. And look, I think the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes there and now Justin Herbert, I think it's already gotten tougher. And I know there were a lot of Chargers fans too, because I was interacting with them last week. There were a lot of Chargers fans that I was talking to, and they were saying, look, I don't see how the Chargers can go back to Tyrod Taylor after the way that Justin Herbert's been playing. It's unfortunate for Tyrod, but look, here's the deal. The NFL, it's all about winning games, and Justin Herbert at this point, he's made the offense look better, and he's made the offense look more competitive and scary than Tyrod did.
Well, and that's the funny thing, though, too, is it's like the only quarterback that's actually won the game is Tyrod so far this year. But let's not act like all wins and losses are the same, right? When you take the Super Bowl champs to overtime and a 58-yard field goal to beat you, when you go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady and answer him, throw for throw, there's just no going back at that point. And my biggest thing with it always was, how do you go to Keenan Allen and tell him his production is going to get cut in half? How do you go to the guys in the locker room and still tell them that you're trying to do what's best for this team to win if you go back to Tyrod? Because that's just been how significant the gap has been between those two guys. I mean, the first week you get an offensive pass interference call against A.J. Green and a missed chip shot, where Randy Bullock's grabbing his calf and then he's limping with the other calf off the field. I mean, it was such a freak scenario. But then you have these last few games where you don't get the win, but they're played exceptional. The offense has been way better. I think the first game when he rolled out to the left, he tried to throw across his body into double coverage to Keenan Allen in the end zone, who was throwing his hand up. I think that's partially why you haven't seen as many rollouts. I think they're building themselves back into it, and I think the trust is still getting built there. The next week he gets put in the same scenario, and then he runs it for a first down instead. Mm-hmm. And then the next play he throws an interception. So I think you are going to see more of those concepts. I did say when they drafted him, hey, if you build the system around this guy, he might be able to fit into it. But to say that's what's happened, I think would be underselling what he's done, because the leaps and bounds that he made, I think, are so impressive to me so far. And I think it's just his unflappability. I think that's impressed me so far. Now it's just to see if he can cut out that one interception that he's had every game.
Right, absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up in terms of talking about the boot action, bootleg, rolling out, things like that, because it was going to be my next question for you around, we saw Tyrod Taylor run 37% of his dropbacks out of play action. We've seen 33% so far when it comes to Justin Herbert. Obviously, that's something that they want to continue to build around and evolve off of in terms of, as you mentioned, crafting this offense around him, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you've seen what he's been able to do on the run, and he doesn't really lose any accuracy so far when he's out there. Obviously, if you're doing it all the time and you're kind of limiting your options, and now you're just getting into a scenario where, hey, you see if one or two is open, and then if not, you're throwing it out of bounds, as opposed to what he's been able to do so far, which is make checks at the line of scrimmage, change protections, go through progressions, and then hit the running back in the check down if he has to. I mean, I don't think they thought he could do as much of that. I think that's why you've seen a little bit less. But I do think when you have when you have a quarterback who can run like him, I think you always want to get him to the perimeter of the defense and give him a chance to do something with his legs. I mean, you don't want him sliding as awkwardly as you've seen, and supposedly we've heard from him that he's been working on that. But I think we've kind of just seen the tip of the iceberg as far as his athleticism and him getting on the move and him making an impact with his legs. The first game he was in against the Chiefs, he had a little speed option play. He fakes the pitch, keeps it himself, and takes it down to the 2-yard line. After that, the play calling was a mess, and the Chargers ended up kicking a field goal after it. But you see that kind of ability, and when you have that and you can use that, especially in the red zone, I mean, I think that's just – there's no bigger weapon to have in the red zone than a quarterback that's liable to tuck it, take it himself, and just have to have the defense account for it at all times. So I do think there's part of it that's we want to keep our young guy healthy, but I do think that you're just kind of scratching the surface of getting him out on the run and actually using all of those athletic tools that he has to the best of his abilities.
Yeah.
Just don't take any more shots, Justin. Just go out of bounds. Don't.
I think all the rookie quarterbacks are trying to learn that right now.
That first game, though, with the Chiefs, that linebacker definitely took the worst of that one on the sideline.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like a car wreck.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, hey, one more thing I want to take a look at here with you, Dan, is take a look at this defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. They're banged up. Losing a guy like Chris Harris Jr. in the secondary, that's obviously huge. Bosa being questionable coming into this game. What do the Chargers have to do defensively to adjust with some of these key injuries? Because really the defensive side of the ball, I feel like, has been impacted the most so far this season due to injuries.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Chris Harris Jr., and that's just not even to mention the best guy they have back there, which is Derwin James, unquestionably. And they've missed him so far this year. They were a little deeper at safety. You have Nazir Adderley, who was always meant to be the free safety, and you can have Rayshon Jenkins, the starting free safety from last year, slide in at strong safety. But they've really struggled. I mean, I think most people, if you watched the game last week, saw all the busted coverages on the back end. But I do think that what that stems from is a lack of a pass rush. I mean, this defense is predicated with Gus Bradley to get a pass rush, make quarterbacks throw the ball before they want to, and then the zone defense isn't as predictable and isn't getting picked apart as much as it did against Tom Brady. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the only time they didn't score on a drive last week in the second half is when they were taking a knee to run out the clock. I mean, that's how bad the Chargers defense was. They didn't get off the field one time, but if you're going to get off the field, you have to get a pass rush. So far, Melvin Ingram's been on IR as well. Justin Jones, another defensive lineman who is a big part of that rotation, is on IR. I think that the pass rush has to get home. I do think Joey Bosa will play. He's been working through stuff. If they finally ended up just saying, hey, let's just give him the entire week off instead of just having him go out there and play 75% of the snaps, I wouldn't mind it. I mean, you want to see that guy get healthy. You have a very winnable stretch of games coming up where you start seeing the Dolphins and you start seeing the Jets instead of seeing the Saints and the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, right? So if this was the week they decided to do it, I'd be cool with it. But I think for this defense, it's finding that pass rush, because if you don't, there's just not enough back there at this point to hold up. Because if you're going to give them 3 or 4 seconds in the pocket, they're going to pick you apart, because for the most part, the cover three's coming. You have the shell on the back end over the top. But if you're running deep over routes under that, and the linebackers are, having to keep dropping back, inexperienced linebackers like Kenneth Murray, it's just asking for issues. But I think even though the 5 touchdowns come against the defensive backs, I think you can't underestimate how much of that is just the Chargers not being able to get home with that defensive front.
Absolutely. Daniel, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Once again, you can find the Locked On Chargers podcast on your preferred podcast platform every single Monday through Friday. Follow him on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, at Locked On LAC. Dan, enjoy a stress-free Sunday of football.
I know.
And we'll get at it on Monday, right?
All right, boys. Have fun.
Take care, bro.
Stress-free Sunday, Ross. I felt that way last week when Denver had that moment where they're like, all right, they're not going to be able to play, especially when they played on that Thursday night. I was like, I could just sit back and I could just watch football and enjoy it. Things are going to change though, but we got some big news here, Ross. The NFL, they've now announced they're looking at adding a Week 18
window,
almost kind of like a storage facility there. Mike Tanier of the Pro Football Network had just reported that. But also another big time news for today that impacts today. Julio Jones has been ruled out for the Atlanta Falcons.
All right.
And we just saw him on Monday Night Football. He seemed to re-aggravate the injury that was hindering him against the Packers. He is out of today's matchup.
That makes sense. Well, clearly the NFL has been watching Locked On NFL Sunday, so we expect our checks whenever everybody's ready. Thank you very much, NFL. No, but I think that's great news. It's a good solution moving forward with all of that. And absolutely, look, when you have a hamstring injury in the first place, it's tough to come back from Sunday to Monday. But when you've re-aggravated one on top of that, that's really, or from Monday to Sunday, that's even tougher. But now we're going to get to our final guest today, the expert on the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to welcome in our good friend, Brian Peacock of the Locked On 49ers podcast. Brian, thank you very much for your patience with us today and for joining us. You follow him on Twitter at BD Peacock. How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's a pleasure to talk with you guys. Ross, Cody, you guys have killed it on this Locked On Live every Sunday morning. I'm pumped on it. So keep doing a great job. It's been a lot of fun watching you guys, and I'm excited to join you for the first time here.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you here.
I was just going to tell fans, too, if you're watching this on your phone, you can actually pull us up on YouTube or on your TV, right? If you want to watch us on the TV, we are there for you, Locked On Live as well. But, Brian, we got a lot to talk about here today. We're talking about this 49ers football team, and the biggest question I have for you, the quarterback debacle with Jimmy Garoppolo being out the last couple of weeks just kind of reared its head a little bit. The 49ers have found ways to adapt and survive. We obviously saw Nick Mullins struggle. What's the status on Jimmy G heading into the matchup here against the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, Jimmy G is going to play. The 49ers getting a few players back today. Jimmy G will start against the Dolphins, and it's a rough week for Nick Mullins because obviously he didn't play well in week 4. He went from the starting quarterback to now been demoted to third string, so it's going to be C.J. Beathard, who's the backup for Jimmy Garoppolo. And we'll see where Jimmy G's high ankle sprain is. It's an injury that can linger sometimes, so I'm sure he'll be heavily taped up. We'll see how he's moving around. It would be hard to believe that he's 100% right now, but the 49ers say he's good enough to go. He's been cleared, and he's going to start against the Dolphins. The 49ers also getting back Raheem Mostert, a running back. And there was an illness that popped up during the week with Deebo Samuel. Weren't sure if he was going to be able to go. It's not COVID related, but it looks like he's going to play as well, according to the latest reports. So the 49ers getting healthy on offense. We saw what George Kittle meant to the offense last week, blowing up for 15 catches and 180 yards when he's in there. So we might actually get to see what this was supposed to look like coming into the season for the 49ers offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is big. And then you have the guy that I wanted to ask you about, the rookie wide receiver out of Arizona State. You've got Brandon Ayuk, who's looked incredible, however it is that they get the ball in his hand. What can you tell us about the rookie? And then now getting both him and Deebo Samuel back with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. How big of a boost did this offense just get?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge boost. And seeing Deebo Samuel on the field was big. He was only on the field for about 25 snaps last week, and I'm sure he'll play as long as he is up to it with his illness, some flu-like symptoms. If he's up to it, play as many snaps as he can as a starter there with Brandon Ayuk. And they're just so dynamic after the catch. And Deebo Samuel termed them Yak Bros. today or this week. So, those are the Yak Bros, and George Kittle is part of that. And the offensive weapon that is Kyle Juszczyk can be part of the Yak Bros, I think.
Right.
Yards after catch, that's what Shanahan's passing game is all about. And three of the best yards per catch guys in the league there with Debo, Ayuk, and George Kittle on the field at the same time. So I think, though, that the 49ers need to win a little bit on the outside. So it might come down to those matchups against a team like the Miami Dolphins, who plays a lot of man coverage, and they're getting Byron Jones back. So you got Xavier Howard and Byron Jones on the outside, and you've got Debo Samuel, the rookie, and the rookie and Ayuk and Debo Samuel on the outside for the 49ers. Can they beat that man coverage? Because if you're the Miami Dolphins coming into this game, you want to stop the run. You want to stop George Kittle. Mm-hmm. There might be a lot of one-on-ones on the outside. The 49ers offense has not been good going outside the numbers this season at all. They haven't attempted it many times, and that's just not been the strength of the team. So it might come down to those wide receivers needing to make some big plays, possibly down the field and near the sideline.
Absolutely.
The 49ers defense, look, it's been evident just how different they look without the presence of Nick Bosa on the football field. What is it that they've been able to do to kind of counteract the impact of his loss? Because, I mean, there's no replacing a guy like Nick Bosa, but we've seen the defense struggle the last couple of weeks, especially without getting that pass rush that are consistently the way that they have been able to.
You know, it's funny because the defense has played pretty well and sort of held up their end of the bargain so far this year, even without D Ford and Nick Bosa, and then the Niners have missed Richard Sherman. He's still on IR. Mm-hmm. He won't play today, and the secondary and the cornerbacks position specifically is a big issue for the 49ers right now. But the 49ers have done okay up front, and it's odd for a team to lose 3 first-round picks on their defensive line, counting Solomon Thomas, who is also out for the year, and still have 2 more first-rounders on the line with Eric Armstead, who got paid, and he's got to be the anchor for that defense, and he's played really well now this year with both those guys out, and the rookie and Javon Kinlaw. So Kinlaw's shown flashes. The 49ers, I think, will be happy to be facing a quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick who can move a little bit, but is mostly a pocket passer, and they know where he's going to be because that's the kind of quarterback that's given him fits, is those quarterbacks that can extend plays with their legs and make things happen in the running game and corralling those quarterbacks, and they do lack a little bit of juice up front. So I think they're in a good situation to hassle Ryan Fitzpatrick still, even though they're missing so much talent on their defensive line. The defense has done a really good job, but man, at cornerback, they've got some issues now, so they've still got to cover guys, and it's going to be a tough ask.
Yeah. It's been a pretty incredible thing to watch. I mean, you mentioned some of the players that they're missing on defense. I'm going to go through. I have to read off the list here. We've got Nick Bosa, D Ford, Ziggy Ansah, Richard Sherman, Solomon Thomas, and Kwan Williams, all the players that are at least on injured reserve for right now. And then, of course, DeForest Buckner traded over the offseason. But yet, somehow, or not even somehow, but to their credit, still top 3 when it comes to EPA per play allowed on defense. Top 3 in the run game. I believe it's top 10 in the passing game, but still very, very good. What has it been that's allowed them to maintain this success where they found it, right? I know that they're still struggling in certain places, as both of you pointed out, but they have found success in certain places. What has allowed them to do that over on the defensive side?
Scheme is part of it. Robert Saleh might be angling for a head coaching job in a few months here, and probably well-deserved there. So you got to credit Saleh there. Maybe the most underrated player on the 49ers defense, even though he was in the NFL top 100, and he's getting more credit around the league, is Fred Warner.
Yep.
And when you have a player that's that good, captain in the middle of the defense, he can cover. He's just the perfect modern-day linebacker, and maybe the best linebacker in the NFL right now. That's the level he's playing at. That obviously helps. They've been pretty good at safety, and again, still some talent up front, and the defensive line has done a really good job there. And the other thing is that they've played 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, with both of those teams in New York, and the Jets and the Giants. And so I don't think we really know who the 49ers are right now, because those are the only 2 teams they've beaten. And
I love the honesty in that.
The 49ers need to go out and beat some more teams, and the schedule, they have some opportunities. The schedule gets tough. They have the most difficult schedule in the NFL from week 6 on, starting with the Rams next week. So the 49ers really need to beat the Dolphins and be above 500 before they start that gauntlet of a run from week 6 that lasts really through week 17.
Anytime you deal with injuries, you're going to see the type of resiliency that a football team has when you have some of these circumstances. And as you mentioned, a tough schedule stretch coming up for the 49ers. It's going to be interesting to see how Robert Saleh and Kyle Shanahan get this team on track. Maybe they get a boost from Jimmy Garoppolo today, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. And I think especially having Raheem Mostert back, I mean, he is a ridiculously fast and talented physical football player. I think things are going to uptrend for them offensively. We'll be eager to see once they get some of these guys back on defense, can they continue to become that strong team that we saw them last year that made it to the Super Bowl?
Absolutely, yeah. Getting right on offense, they're getting healthy across the board. Everybody but Nick Bosa, they should get back at some point. And he's really the one impact player, and he's hugely impactful. But they should get everybody else back, so that'll give them an opportunity to look closer to the team that they thought they would be coming into the year, which will be huge for the 49ers. What's funny is the one unit that's not as banged up, that's not played well, that really need to up their game is the offensive line. The 49ers have given up, I think it is 40 quarterback hits so far through 4 weeks, which is the most in the NFL, and that just can't continue to happen. So that's a big factor, I think, for the 49ers. But getting Jimmy G back is so important. The Niners are 22-5 when he's the starting quarterback, and I think they're 5-21 without Jimmy Garoppolo since Kyle Shanahan's shown up as the head coach and offensive coordinator for the 49ers. So that tells you how important Jimmy Garoppolo is, even though the numbers might not be wowing when he's in the game. And here's another quick nugget for this football game that I think is fascinating, and I think it'll be fun, especially for 49ers fans, because it'll mean they're up in the second half. Maybe get the debut of Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know. I think it's time. Like, if the Niners have a lead, this is the 5th NFL week. You got a rookie quarterback. We heard from Daniel Wade earlier talking about the Chargers rookie quarterback. We know what Joe Burrow's been doing this season. You got to get Tua in there at some point soon. Maybe get a little tune-up, get him a few snaps this week before, and on the Peacock and Williamson podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, we talked a lot about when Tua would play, and we looked at the Miami Dolphins schedule earlier in the season, and we thought, yeah, you know what? There is some tough opponents early in the season. Ryan Fitzpatrick, see if you get something going, see if you think you might have a playoff team, and you don't want to disrupt it yet, and then get the rookie in there at some point. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, looking at week 5, the 49ers could be a tough defense, and then after that, week 6, kind of a cakewalk against Cody's Broncos. Maybe that's the week that you start Tua for the first time. And so maybe
that game is now week
11 before next week.
That's right. That's now week 11 now, that game.
Oh, is it already moved?
Yep, they moved it.
Oh, it's wild. We are moving a mile a minute here through the NFL schedule, and it's only getting – the good news is that we're getting more weeks of football. So at least there's that.
Well, there's still an hour. Hopefully, hopefully the rest of these games kick off.
No kidding. Man, Brian, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I'm going to throw Peacock and Williamson up for you. Y'all can catch y'all can catch Brian 2 times every single day, Monday through Friday, on his shows. Locked On 49ers, Monday through Friday, expert covering the San Francisco 49ers. And you can catch him on our national show, along with former NFL scout Matt Williamson at the Peacock and Williamson Show, also Monday through Friday. Follow him on Twitter at BD Peacock. Brian, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, man. Enjoy the game today, and hopefully we'll see you again soon, and appreciate all your support with all this.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure, fellas. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Brian's a good guy, man.
Oh, yeah. One of the best. One of the best, for sure.
I mean, ever since I came onto the network, Brian was one of the first guys I connected with. I was like, man, this guy's got some energy to him. Which
I just want to match him all the time.
You know, he and Matt Williamson do a great job. They used to do Locked On NFL, but Locked On NFL is now different. We have 5 days, different hosts, different topics, and also some of the biggest storylines around the National Football League on Locked On NFL. And then if you want to catch Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson, the Peacock and Williamson Show on the Locked On NFL Network on your favorite podcast provider, where you get them every single day. The Locked On NFL Network, your team every day.
Absolutely. And it's always all about our local experts covering the biggest stories. So let's go big. Let's widen the scope a little bit. We got just a couple minutes left here. We have 4 games to pick because now we don't know where the other game is happening at this point that we originally had. So let's go ahead and fly through these. We'll get started with our Locked On NFL Sunday picks as we do every week here. Let's start off with the Carolina Panthers visiting the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons right now up -2. Favored. But, of course, we just learned the big news that Julio Jones is going to be out for this game. So, Cody, what does this game look like for you?
I've got Carolina with this game, and Carolina's been very impressive considering how young they've been. The last couple of weeks, they've been able to turn in performances. They've been able to come out with some victories, and I think that where Atlanta is at right now, they just don't have enough firepower. They're banged up. They just can't seem to get any consistency going. I think Carolina is going to keep pounding in this one.
Oh, I love that. That's really good. Yes, no, I am with you 100%. I'm such a big fan of Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Two Gloves out here having a fantastic season so far, running this new Joe Brady, Matt Rule offense. It's looking really, really good for them. Robbie Anderson's been fantastic. Curtis Samuel finally getting in the mix in Carolina. I love it. And they've not slowed down in the run game. They're still producing on the ground with Mike Davis, right? They're not producing to Christian McCaffrey type numbers, don't get me wrong, but that rush offense did not just die off with the loss of Christian McCaffrey. So good news there for them. Let's go now to this game, which is essentially a pick'em, honestly. 3-1 Indianapolis Colts at the 3-1 Cleveland Browns. This one, to me, the Cleveland Browns have just looked like what we've expected them to look like over the past 3 years. It's finally happening. So I'm going full Believeland here, and I'm taking the Browns. What about you?
I'm going with the Colts on this one. I think defensively they're very, very tough, and I think Phillip Rivers has been very good for them as of late. I mean, ever since that Week 1 performance against Jacksonville where he had those interceptions, he's been very good at protecting the football. He called out Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan. Look, Phillip Rivers used to be in the AFC West. Man. I was sick of watching Phillip Rivers because I covered the Broncos, but now I want Rivers mic'd up every Sunday. Give me that. I will pay $100 a week to be able to get Phillip Rivers mic'd up. I got the Colts on this one. They've been playing really good football, and I think that they're going to start trending upwards in that division in the AFC South.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's jump over now to the Sunday night game. The Minnesota Vikings 1-3 taking on the 4-0 Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks favored by a touchdown. Which way do you go here?
Russell Wilson, MVP so far.
Yeah, absolutely right.
I think that Seattle, they've got the firepower offensively. Russell Wilson is playing smart, efficient football, and I think Minnesota, they just don't have the dogs in this race, I think, to be able to win this one. I think it's going to be a fun matchup, but I think Seattle's going to win it by at least 2 scores.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if the Minnesota Vikings win this game, we will most certainly have Luke Braun on next week to talk about it because that would be a humongous win for the Vikings. I know Seattle's struggling a lot over on defense, as most NFC teams are right now, but I got to go with Russ. They've let him cook, and he's looked fantastic. Those wide receivers, everybody around that offense just looking great. So I'm going to go with Seattle there as well. And then to wrap up our show today, the Los Angeles Chargers at 1-3, heading to take on the 2-2 New Orleans Saints. New Orleans favored -8 in this game, which to me is a big old spread for their performances so far this year. I know they scored 35 straight points last week against the Lions, but I don't know about this one. So this one for me, I'm going to take the Saints to win this game at home. There's no better quarterback on Monday Night Football than Drew Brees. Most completions, most yardage, most passing touchdowns out of any other quarterback from 2006 on Monday Night Football. Helps that they get a lot of Monday Night Football games, of course, but they've been fantastic under the lights there. But I'm not too sure about this spread. I might take the Chargers to keep this one at least close because I think this might be a shootout.
Yeah, and I think this is the game. Sorry, Ross. I think the Chargers Justin Herbert's going to finally get his first win as a starting quarterback. I think it's going to be a really close game. It's going to boil down to maybe a last-second field goal or a fourth-quarter drive. That's been the thing with Herbert so far this season. They've been in games. They've been either tied, they've been ahead, and then there's one mistake that Herbert has made in that Chargers game, late in that game, with an interception last week, an interception. I think that this is the week where Herbert gets over the hump, and I think I got the Chargers here on a little bit of an upset.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. Chargers, 3 out of their 4 games decided by single digits, by, just less than a touchdown. So it has been a series of heart palpitations for all Chargers fans out there. And certainly no team, no fan base understands that maybe more than the New Orleans Saints, whose games always seem to come up close. So I'm with it. We have some differing opinions, so we'll definitely talk about these next week, and we'll recap these and then see who comes out on top. Cody, as always, such a pleasure to be here with you on this Sunday, and look forward to doing it again next week.
We'll see how many people understand what I'm doing right now. Yes. NFC South, they get it.
I don't know. Which one is it? Was it? I don't know. Anyway. No, man, but
I appreciate you, Ross. And look, to all the listeners and the followers that watch this show, you can get us every Sunday here, Locked On NFL Sunday, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. We are everywhere as well. Your team every day, Locked On NFL Sunday. Make sure that you stay tuned and you stay locked on.